Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for being with us today. I have the pleasure of hosting a panel with a few companies that we've had the pleasure of working exceptionally close with over the years, in particular here in Japan, where they've all successfully conducted various types of business, for our part mostly related to financing. But I thought it'd be interesting to get the panelists' perspectives on the lessons learned from their dealings in Japan and what it takes to get an entrance into this market, because the Japanese market is a fairly high barrier to entry market. I think in all aspects. If you want to order a new building in Japan, you don't just call up the shipyard and tell them you want 3 slots. You could do that in China, maybe in Korea, but not in Japan. If you want to borrow money, you don't just send an email to a Japanese bank and tell them you want to borrow money. It takes certain due process, and it can be at times quite tedious for overseas companies to transact in this country. But there are, of course, big benefits also to being here. So that's the kind of the general theme on the topics we want to cover here. So maybe we can start with you, Nicos, from SBLK. On which fronts is your business connected with Japan?
Can you hear me okay? First of all, thank you, Nicolas, and to Capital Link for inviting us here. For SBLK, the Japanese market has been traditionally the place where we have conducted most of our business. We are related to the Japanese market, of course, in the new building arena, having built 10 vessels several years ago, the latest eco-generation ships, Capes and Kamsarmaxes, on the time charter in business, which is what we have been doing during the past few years with friendly Japanese domestic owners. Of course, Japanese financing, and of course with Fearnleys, both traditional financing and sale and leaseback. SBLK is the largest dry bulk company listed in NASDAQ with 122 bulk carriers.
Thanks. And I guess maybe what would be, you've obviously been in this market for a very long time. If we look at someone who's maybe a more recent entrant at least on the financing side, Stamatis, how long have you been doing business in Japan, and what would you say are the key hurdles and gating items to achieve success the way you have?
Thank you. Once again, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Nicolas, and thank you, Nicolas, for doing this great event. So we're very happy to be here in one of our favorite cities. We take great pride in the deals that we have conducted here in Japan. Our initial contact started back in 2015 and then 2017. And the last 3 years, we have been extremely active in the country. We have bought a big number of ships from Japanese sellers, Japanese owners. We have done a lot of financing here in Japan, both in sale and leasebacks as well as direct financing. We have one of our most strategic partners, NYK, in commercial management, that we do a lot of ships in chartering with them. So we have been very active here in Japan, and we like the way of conducting business. We feel it's very good to the mentality and the psychology of our company. We like direct and transparent approach, as it is here in Japan. And the fact that, you have a deal and you have a good deal that is not going to change in the future. And that's something that we like and we appreciate. We have the option of doing a lot of business globally. So for us, doing business in Japan is a matter of choice. And it's a matter that, for our company, as I said before, it fits very, very well with the character and the psychology of Seanergy and United Group.
Thank you. And then one for you, Georg, which is, I guess, particularly relevant for your business. Has financing in Japan been linked to business with Japanese counterparties, or has your pursuit of Japanese financing been done on a standalone basis? You work in the car carrier industry. Clearly, Japan is one of the major exporters of cars. How closely do you see the link between, the role that Japan plays in the, call it, underlying cargo that you're transporting, the operators, and your pursuit of financing here?
Yeah, so Our company is in car carriers. We're stock listed in Oslo. Also, you can buy our stock in New York on the OTCQX. Japan is probably our most important market. We are in car carriers. It's long-term business. We're transporting cars. It's a very high-value product, and it's important for Toyotas and everyone of this world that we take very good care of their cars. This is why, when we approached the Japanese market more than 40 years ago, we have built up over the years, for now more than 40 years, this trust with our customers, with all the big three, NYK, MLK line, but also some of the smaller operators in Japan. So with that same approach, we have been in the past done sale and leaseback, we've done JOLCOs, and now we are also very proud to capitalize on our name and our good contracts to also now develop direct lending with the Japanese banks. So it's all about just long-term being here. We have people on the ground in Tokyo probably at least 4 times a year. We come on a regular basis. We receive our good friends in Norway when they visit Europe. So it's all about just continuing on that very foundation of being long-term partner with our partners, and also being financial partners, but also charters and operators.
Thank you. And for you, Edvin, with Solvang being a major LPG shipping player, obviously Japan is an important country when it comes to that commodity as well. But Solvang being, maybe more of a TC or a ship owner that time charters out its vessels, Japan has maybe not had the same importance for you in terms of chartering and new buildings. You haven't built a ship here for a while. So for you, I guess you've pursued financing in Japan on a standalone basis, not necessarily linked to cargoes. How have you found that experience? Do you feel that it's more difficult to pursue that type of business when there's no natural link to like an operator or charter or something like that?
Yeah, thank you. Well, it's a good question. We, as you said, we constructed vessels here about 20 years ago, but since then I haven't really been able to do so. So for the last 10 years or so, we've been focusing on the financial side mainly. And for us, that was a bit of a long process in a way. We spent several years traveling here before the first deal was made, and I think what was really important then was to have a clear story, a transparent story, showing the quality in our operations. And once we got the first JOLCO done, which was on a small older vessel, the next one came fairly quickly, and then it's grown exponentially. Now we have traditional debt lending, we have JOLCOs, we have done sale leasebacks, we have equity partners, and we even have joint venture now. So the targeting the financial side has also generated business in itself. But I think since we didn't really have a product business as such in Japan, the biggest hurdle we found was really having a track record. If you don't have a track record, it's hard to get one, right? But it is really worthwhile, and very pleased with what we've achieved.
So a bit of a controversial topic maybe, but shipping, well, that shipping is a very highly cyclical industry is not controversial. Everyone in this room knows that. But I have a feeling, that's my impression, having worked with the Japanese market for a while, that cyclicality works a little bit different in Japan than it does in the Western world. To you, Nicos, what is your experience with lenders and lessors through the different points in the cycle? Like, just to help you along the way, if you see, 4 or 5 years ago, the Western lenders were not really there to support commodity shipping and ship owners. What role did Japan play for Starbulk back then?
I think what we need to clarify, in order to be able to do business in Japan, you have a major hurdle to clear, which is basically build a relationship. That takes time. So whether it's for Starbulk, for any other shipping company, you need to invest the time to build a relationship, to be tested, both in good, but to be honest, more in bad markets. And that's where corporate relationships and personal relationships are tested. And once you come out of that, holding a good reputation in the Japanese market, that will follow you, I think, for most of your career in shipping. So I'm making that, that entry point because this is the basis of any kind of answer to the cyclicality question, whether it's financing, which I fully agree that during difficult times, based on the asset used for sale and leaseback or traditional financing, we have experienced extremely good support. And now that the tables are turning again and financing in Japan is, as we also heard earlier in the previous panel, is a bit more tight and a bit more expensive, we as Starbucks need to find a way to continue engaging in the financing community in Japan, even if it is at a marginal cost differential. I think also on the rest of the operational front, whether it is TC-in or getting opportunities for new buildings, you cannot qualify however big you are unless you have built the track record, and that can be easily lost. So I think that's of paramount importance from anywhere you look at the Japanese market.
Thank you. I guess, Edvin, when you guys financed some of your ethylene carriers out here, you know, yes, you ordered them at a low point in the cycle and the vessels had a very cheap new building price, but the state of the underlying market was not fantastic. How did you experience the support from the lenders and the terms that they were willing to give relative to what you were seeing from Western banks?
Yeah, that's a good point. And as you said, those vessels were ordered at the perfect time, really, because they were very cheap new build price. But when they came out, the market wasn't great, and we experienced that the European banks were a little bit reluctant to give, not to give to make the debt available, but the pricing was a bit off. And we used our established kind of track record and connections in Japan and received really competitive financing. And what we see is really it's the two markets, the European ones that we use a lot, and also the Japanese move a bit differently between each other. And maybe that's just our experience, but the Japanese here, they focus a little bit more on the relationship and the track record you have, rather than the short-term market in a way. So that's very valuable for us to have a foot in both camps, so to speak.
Stamatis, you've used the Japanese sale and leaseback market quite extensively, and obviously sale leasebacks by nature are typically done at higher LTV than traditional bank loans. How has that market helped you sort of stretch your equity and free up liquidity for you? Has that been impactful for your company?
Well, as I mentioned before, we didn't use the Japanese leasing market for getting, lower equity and higher leverage. We have been fortunate to have raised a big amount of capital from the U.S. capital markets in the last few years, so we were very, very well capitalized when we started doing the Japanese leasing deals. For us, it was a matter of choice. As I mentioned before, it was a matter of big investment in the country, because since we have not done any new buildings the last few years, we have decided to invest in our relationships in other forms. Sale and leasebacks was one of them, chartering was another. So for us, having the ability of getting funding from a number of sources, high-level funding, from a number of sources globally, from China, from Europe, from America, for us it was a matter of decision to invest in the country and to invest in people, because when you do sale and leasebacks or when you do direct lending, the way that the whole deal is structured is not like so bilateral as it seems. Even though at the end of the day you have 2 or 3 signatures on a piece of paper, you have so many components associated. You have Japanese owners, you have Japanese banks behind. So the overall how do you say it, spread of the name and the spread of fame that you achieve by doing a sale and leaseback deal with Japan is tremendous. So as I mentioned before, it was a matter of choice for us, not to get a higher leverage.
That's a very interesting point that you make there. Obviously, I think maybe a lot of Western companies don't always think about that aspect, but when you do, whether it's a club deal for a senior secured mortgage loan, or you do a sale and leaseback, Japanese like to ask other Japanese, do reference checks on overseas companies, and if you have done, for example, a sale and leaseback where there's a strong local owner involved, and that's supported by a local or regional bank, then that obviously carries some weight. And if you've performed and done a good job during the execution of that deal, then that obviously follows with you. For you, Georg, talking about cycles, you're maybe at the peak. I'm not saying peak because it could go even higher the way things are looking now, but you're at least at a very high point cyclically for car carriers. Do you see that as a drawback when you are in discussions with Japanese financiers? Do people point to sort of recent history and that where the market is coming from? Or do you see that there's an ability to take into account that there's a shift in the underlying trade of cars, etc., and that there's support for that?
Well, I think it's all of the above. I think the analysts, both from banks and financial institutions, here do a very thorough job. I think they are focusing also on where we came from, that the market was very poor, and want to make sure that the file and the deal we do together is very safe, which I think is very wise. I think the structure that we are setting up to do is quite conservative at the moment. We make a lot of cash, but we also then want to make sure that we, in this height of the cycle, we also get rid of a lot of debt and deleverage the company heavily. So I think we have a common interest there, a common understanding, and I think I would say the Japanese banks and analysts are behaving as expected and very rational and are very extremely professional. So I see no surprise there. I am very happy with the questions and the dialogue we have with them, and it's very open. We are a very transparent company. We have no real secrets, so we tell them everything we know about the market and about ourselves, and they seem to appreciate that. And so I think it's fairly straightforward. But again, it's long term, it's relationship, and we want to invest in that. We have done that on chartering. We have built ships here. We know, and we like that. The car carriers is long term. You buy, you contract out, and you really keep the ships their entire life, and then you recycle them or sell them to second-hand or second trades. So it's a little bit different than other shipping segments where you play the cycles and you sell and buy ships all the time. You actually trade them out and you deliver a quality product. I think it's a bit different.
Staying on a similar topic, how do you see the role that Japan will play going forward for your business specifically, given the big shift towards EV production and EV exports? Clearly, maybe China's going to have as much of an impact as Japan, but that there is a shift going on there. And how do you see that impacting your dealings with Japan?
No, I think I mean Japan is still, although China is probably surpassing this year, is the largest exporter of cars globally, and they have been for almost an eternity. So I think we see it quite natural. Japan is still growing. It's they're catching, and Toyota is announcing a lot of very exciting new models. They will probably transform the whole battery technology with solid state. We will be driving more than 1,000 kilometers on a 10-minute charge. It would change everything. So I think right now, yes, China is in the lead. I think everyone was really surprised at Shanghai Auto Show last year when there was 70 new models. Just wow, what happened during COVID here? And now the rest, everyone else is catching up. I think it's really the Europeans which will be losing out. So which is great for shipping, because that means there's more to carry. It's all about Asia to the world. It's not everything else is just backhaul. So that's what matters. And it's Japan, it's Korea, and it's China all together. And when they're all firing on the pistons, we get fantastic markets.
Actually, Nico, maybe we should put some cars on the backhaul, you know, on the caves, right?
Yeah.
Well, we almost did it with containers, but we missed that chance.
That would be nice.
So a similar topic for you, or question for you, Edvin. It has been announced that the Japanese utility companies are planning to ramp up imports of ammonia, to burn ammonia together with coal, to reduce emissions. How do you see that influencing your business?
Well, I'm glad you asked. You know, Japan is an important country for our segment. You know, they're one of the largest users of LPG. So, of course, that's just important to maintaining the market itself. But the news that they would start importing green/blue ammonia to replace some of the coal is good news for our industry, and particularly the vessels that we have, which are the largest ones that transport ammonia. So I think that could seriously impact our segment and our business. If the volumes come as sort of communicated, 26, 27 and beyond, it could mean a lot in the ammonia carrier side, for sure. So that's it's very interesting, and it's a very good project. And I think Korea is looking at some of the same.
For dry cargo, one topic which hasn't been a topic for discussion during this conference, but something that Fearnley is quite engaged in is subsea minerals. And I think Japan has always been a large importer and processor of metals and raw materials. Do you see the cargo flows for dry bulk, both in and out of Japan, changing in the years to come? Nicos and Stamatis, maybe let you go first, Stamatis.
On the contrary, we see an increased demand for raw materials from Japan. Our close partners here have been in increased needs for ships. To be honest, the minute that we buy a ship, we get an automatic request by our close friends here for chartering. And a big part of our fleet is transporting coal and iron ore to Japan. So we don't really see a slowdown. On the contrary, we have seen the last couple of years after COVID, especially a big increase in raw materials imports in Japan. So we're very happy that there is an alternative market to China as far as steel production is concerned. And you know, I believe that Japan has a strategic advantage of high quality steel globally, and steel is a commodity that is going to be used for the foreseeable future in a number of infrastructure projects around the world. So I don't see any slowdown. You can debate about oil, you can debate about oil products and a number of other sources of energy, but steel is a required commodity for the global infrastructure growth. And I think that Japan has and should maintain their strong strategic advantage in producing high-quality steel for the global infrastructure growth. I don't know, Nicos, if you have.
I agree with Stamatis, Nicolas. I think Japan will continue playing a very key role in the dry bulk space. I am a bit worried about coal eventually being replaced by ammonia for a better cause. But of course, this will be a long development process globally. What is important and we should touch upon is that geopolitical events have had a serious impact in creating additional routes everywhere. Unfortunately, dry bulk shipping and tankers perform typically better when there is turmoil. And I'm saying unfortunately because we don't expect geopolitical events to normalize anytime soon. Regarding trade flows, the fact that we have new technology that is much waited for and it's not ready yet, shipyards being full for other segments, and thank you to container ships and big tankers for not leaving much space for bulk carriers. We feel that there will be a better demand going forward for less ships. If we have the environmental regulation, decarbonization kicking in next year, with CII really taking an impact. Even if most of us disagree with the formula, we expect speed, operating speed to reduce. A 1% reduction in the split of dry bulk fleet is equal to 6% reduction of supply. So yes, there will be changes and shifts in demand. China is still sleeping. It was a bit unfair to expect them to wake up last October and come back to full demand. So whilst we remain focused to our Japanese clients, we believe we're able to offer a service, a competitive service, simply because there is a lot of trade that will allow us to reposition ships as best as possible for both parties.
Thanks. I have a question regarding propulsion technology, and that's something that's touched upon. There's always a panel on every shipping conference about propulsion technology, and there was one in this conference as well. But you know, Japan being, I would say today, predominantly maybe a dry bulk builder in terms of ships, at least for export. How do you see their ability? You know, how advanced are they relative to the Koreans and Chinese in terms of promoting new to propulsion technology? You know, I have the impression that the Japanese have always lagged a few steps behind, but they do that on purpose because they'd rather produce something that's proven and works well in an optimal way, so that you know that what you get is like the perfect workhorse, rather than always being at the cutting edge. But do you see that changing recently? Maybe you, Nicos, first.
That's the main reason I have been here personally this week. It has been a long time with COVID that we've been able to come to see our shipyard friends. I cannot agree more with you than that it is the place we're looking for innovation. We do expect the optimal designs to come out from Japan. There is time because of the fuel uncertainty, so we understand that both on the methanol and the ammonia front, there is a huge amount of work. Some of our friends here are dealing with the ammonia on Newcastlemax, which we're very interested upon. But I think we will see the new designs coming in probably in a couple of years. Tested technology like DF methanol is there, and of course some of the Japanese shipyards have been very active already. But as Starbulk, we need to see the flow of the new green fuels coming in. So there are some doubts on the ability to build up e-methanol substantial enough to support shipping in an economical sense. But as with every new market, when everything sets out and starts, it's expensive. So we believe with more demand and more optimization of supply, the designs from the Japanese yard that will come out in the next couple of years will meet the fuel supply. And I think all of us are looking to get an opportunity to have a glance at the latest design. We were fortunate enough to do that back in 2012 when we experienced the best possible designs. When we saw the results here in Tokyo, we could not believe the innovation only within 3 to 5 years, maybe more than 30 or 35% reduction in consumption. So we're expecting similar developments in the next couple of years.
Edvin, for you who are in a segment where I guess Japan has lost its market position in terms of being a producer and exporter. You know, Japan used to be a leader in LPG and LNG vessel production and have since been surpassed by Korea. What do you think it will take for Japan to regain its position as a leading LPG shipbuilder?
Well, that's a good question. But what we've seen, you know, as I said in the beginning, it's 20 years since we built a vessel here in Japan, 2003 and 2004. And since then, Japan was lagging a little bit versus Korea in terms of the vessel development, being the size and flexibility and efficiency. And they're still lagging a bit on the size side compared to some of the Korean designs and also some of the Chinese designs. But what has been one of the great things with the Japanese built vessel is the quality. And that we've seen on our 20-year-old large gas carriers built here, the quality is impeccable. So I think they certainly need to focus on that, but they also need to be at the forefront of, because in LPG, it's, you know, the cubic meters of the vessel is key. So they need to be at the forefront of and pushing the envelope on the size, really. And in terms of propulsion, in LPG today, that's predominantly dual fuel LPG, and Japan is doing that as well. So I don't think that's such a big difference, really. Question is, you know, what's next? That's for sure, and that's something that our segment obviously is equally occupied with. But yeah, they need to maintain the quality on focus, as a focus on quality, for sure.
And Georg, if you look at your industry or segment, you know, some of the leading charterers are the Japanese operators. They are also utilizing a lot of ships, taking them in on long-term contracts, not necessarily built in Japan. Do you see that there's a way for the Japanese shipyard industry to regain its foothold on the car carriers?
I think they can if they want. I think, unfortunately, I mean, car carriers are a bit different. You know, of course, they build for the big three here in Japan, you know, strategic, also early development with new technology. But I think really, you know, it's to build a car carrier takes up a lot of space in the shipyard. It's a very inefficient building process, and usually the series are not that long. So we see it also now in Korea. The Koreans are not really interested either. So that's why you see with the current order book, everything is really being produced, or not every, 90% at least is being now built in China. And another factor of that is, of course, now China is growing on their exports. So it's quite natural that the Chinese companies like BYD, Costco, and so forth, they would like to build locally, as the Japanese did when they built up their fleets. I think there is some geopolitical things here as well. So we have built in Japan. We would love to build in Japan again, but I don't think the shipyards really want to build. So, and that's also fully understandable. So we go where the people would like to build, because it's always good to do deals with people who really like to help you.
Stamatis, changing direction a bit here. You know, during COVID, it was impossible to travel. Japan was one of the countries that was particularly hard to get into, and we've all heard the panelists say that, you know, traveling here, getting FaceTime, building the relationship on the personal level is really important to achieving business success here. How hard did you find it to, you know, try to develop business while you couldn't travel here? Did you feel that your Japanese counterparties managed to adapt to the Zoom and Microsoft Teams world that we all lived in for a couple of years, or did you experience a slowdown in the interaction?
No, on the contrary. We did a lot of business here in Japan during COVID. That's where we invested about $250 million in buying second-hand ships from Japanese owners, doing so much chartering and so much financing. So with a lot of friends here in the room, we have spent hours and hours in Zoom meetings and Teams meetings and little pictures on the monitors, seeing each other for hours due to the time difference. So it has been time-consuming, but if you operate in good faith and trust, even through a computer screen, you can make it happen. So part of our rapid growth the last 3 years have been achieved during the COVID period, buying ships, doing leasing, doing direct financing, a lot of chartering, a lot of discussions about energy-saving devices. And I'm going to go back to the previous discussion. A lot of innovation that we install on the ships has been invented from Japanese makers 20 or 30 years ago, like the propeller Boss-Cap fins in Mitsubishi in the 80s. So by installing on that, it shows how forward-looking the Japanese innovation is. So today we're installing technology that was invented 30 years ago or more to make the ships more efficient. So going back to the previous point, based on our discussions with our good charters here and a lot of our trading houses, like Itochu and Mitsui, we are trying to innovate and make the existing ships more efficient as possible before the breakthrough in the new fuel happens. But COVID, going back to the original question, has been challenging times for the humanity. But with good faith, with trust, and a lot of screen time, literally a lot of screen time, we managed through these little windows on the screen to do great business here in Japan.
So do you think going forward that one could reduce the number of trips to Japan to conclude new business, or is it?
Again, on the contrary, we have decided that at least 3 or 4 times per year we will be here in Japan to maintain our relationships, to grow our business, and to make new friends as we have successfully done in the past years. So, on the contrary.
Okay, so key takeaway, still important to get FaceTime out here. I think that's it from us. If there are any questions, feel free to ask now or pull one of us aside in the break. But thank you to the panelists. Thanks.